All right, welcome back. In this criteria, we are going to look at the standard or quality assurance of the suggested solution. Some people would refer this up they would call it as memorandum, or they would also call it suggested solution, or as also again marking guide. This is a document that provides the answers to the assessment. It's important to moderate that because it's very important to standardize the marking to ensure everybody who is doing the marking also marks within equal standards. But before you get there, it's important to check a few elements which are important. Number one, is the marking guide accurate? Now, if you identify some errors, some unreconciled answers, or some misalignment, it's important to identify these. It's also advisable to to ensure that subject matters who are expert in that particular assessment are involved. This will minimize some of the errors that may not be identified. The mistake we make sometimes, we give other people who are not subject matters to moderate. They may look at the structure, some arithmetic aspect, but they may not identify the content areas which may not will be accurate. So it's advisable. So if this is not met, criteria one, identify that and clarify that to the assessor through maybe a highlight. Number two, corresponds to questions in the question paper. Each question should correspond with a marking guide or a marking answer, where question one should also demonstrate in the marking guide the answer in that particular marking guide. That should go all the way to the final question. So that alignment is very important, because you may realize in some cases you may pick where question one is not the answer in question one when it comes to marking guide. So highlight that quickly and you're able to correct that if that need be. Now, number three allows for alternative responses. Of course, we talked about different way of setting the assessment. Also, the answers should open up, especially where you encourage creativity, or thinking outside the box, alternative answers. So this should not always limit to a specific way of that guide. Where you're expressing your creativity as a participant, the assessment should demonstrate that through the questions, and also the answers should guide the assessors in terms of identifying how to check such kind of creativity and how to reward that. That is question number three, which is very important. And I think we have looked at that when we are dealing with the other aspect in terms of creative way of answering questions. Presentation should be very clear. Let the structure be very clear. If it's section A, answers should be well presented. Section B answers should be clearly presented, as well as section C. And as we talked about in terms of maybe the length, the time, and the reward, also those distribution of the structure should be clearly seen based on the maybe easy to the harder aspect. Also based on the content, be more brief in section A to section C, which may be more broader in terms of the suggested solution. So that should come out very clearly. As well as question number five here, or criteria number five, complete with mark allocation and distribution with questions. So make sure that the questions and answers, mark allocations are clear and aligned. Remember, in the assessment, marks should be clearly identified for each and every question. When you go to the marking guide, the same thing should be clearly. It's also very important to highlight where the points are, each and every point, and the total in a grid to say in this question, point number one mark, point number two marks, and in every question a kind of a grid that distributes those particular marks. That really helps, especially when you're marking, to make sure that you're awarding marks where it is due. Of course, number six, accurate mark allocation for subsection and paper overall. It's linked to question number five, accuracy of marks. Calculate all the total marks of the assessment should also reconcile with what is in the marking guide as well. That reconciliation should be very clear and well identified with. There should be no errors or mistakes to come back and start correcting after. So make sure those clerical errors, especially in mark allocation, are clearly reconciled. And of course, last but not least here, we can see the marking guide should accommodate positive marking. It's related to creative marking, creative responses where you give credit to how students are expressing themselves based on their strength, and allow positive marking where you reward credits where points are valid and have better value than others. This is very important, especially when it comes to marking guide. There could be more, but these are a few items that you will want to check. As an institution or as a company that is dealing with assessment, you can always customize and work around what you'd expect the marking guide to look like in this particular case. Now with this, as usual, make sure that you are able to highlight. Now, as we mentioned earlier, if you identify partially met, please tick. Make sure you note or discuss where you identify as a partially met. If you see this as fully met, of course there is no need of commenting. If you go to number 3, allows for alternative. If it's not met, highlight, but always note the reasoning behind why you ticked not met. Number 4, presentation clear. If you're happy with that or not happy, you can put partially met. If you see there's a mixture of the structure, standard, and the flow, you can always highlight that component. Number 5, complete with allocation and distribution of marks. If you feel fully met, well and good. And of course, accurate mark allocation for subsection. If you feel that's correct, you can put that. You don't need to comment on that. Accommodate positive marking, partial. Remember to comment and highlight why your threshold indicated is partially met. Remember, always highlight if the criteria is not met. Comment why. If the criteria is partially met, also highlight that part. It will give the assessor the opportunity to rectify or change what is not well articulated in the marking guide. Of course, my ticking does not deal with any particular evidence in particular. This is just to guide you so that when you do this, the moderators should now reconcile their feedback and now harmonize. Remember, moderation is not a one-man show. It should be for more than two or more moderators reconciling these standards to come up with a better and quality assurance standard. And with that, thank you so much for that part in terms of marking guide. See you shortly for the next criteria. Thank you.